In the remote northern forests of a long-forgotten state park, a group of old college friends planned a reunion camping trip. They had returned to a place filled with childhood memories, sunlit trails, bubbling creeks, and tall, ancient pines that seemed to guard secrets older than the land itself. Yet as dusk fell on the first night, the woods transformed into a labyrinth of deep shadows and echoing sounds. The group settled around a crackling fire, the orange light dancing on their faces. Laughter filled the air as they recounted shared memories, until a sudden rustle in the undergrowth silenced them. At first, they assumed it was a deer or a curious raccoon. But then the rustling grew deliberate, a measured, almost human cadence. Jason, the most skeptical of the group, joked about a forest trickster playing pranks. His laughter was cut short when he noticed one of his friends, Marcy, had stepped away without comment. She went to gather more firewood, he explained, but the timing was uncanny. Moments later, as another rustling sound came from the dark, Marcy was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in. The group fanned out, calling her name into the oppressive darkness. Hours passed with only the echo of their voices and the relentless creaking of ancient branches. By dawn, only a single shoe, a muddy, blood-stained sneaker, lay near the base of an old pine. The local authorities were notified, and a search began that would yield results more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Weeks later, the local sheriff recounted the incident in hushed tones at a town hall meeting. Marcy's disappearance was not an isolated case. Over the years, hikers and campers reported similar vanishings in this stretch of forest. Some locals whispered that the pines themselves were cursed, guardians of an ancient realm that demanded tribute in the form of lost souls. Others claimed that something, a presence with a deliberate, predatory intelligence, stalked the paths between the trees, luring wanderers away from safety. A recovered video, grainy and nearly indecipherable, showed a dark figure flitting between the trees, its features impossible to discern. Some believed this to be a hallucination born of the campers' collective terror, others insisted it was evidence of something truly otherworldly. The truth remains shrouded in the deep silence of the pines. The haunting legacy of that night endures among locals. Every autumn, when the mists roll in and the forest becomes a theater of spectral light, tales of the vanishing in the pines resurface. Campers leave offerings, small trinkets or notes, in the hope of appeasing the unseen force. Yet many fear that the forest still remembers, and that anyone who ventures too deep risks becoming part of its grim history. Far to the west, nestled against a rugged mountain range, lay an abandoned campsite near an old logging road. What made this spot notorious wasn't its isolation or the harsh climate. It was the decrepit, forgotten cabin that stood nearby. Local lore had it that the cabin was once home to a reclusive family, whose lives were cut short under mysterious circumstances. For decades, travelers spoke in hushed tones about the eerie mirror that hung in its dusty parlor, a mirror said to reveal not your reflection, but the darkness that lies within the human soul. A small group of amateur paranormal investigators, drawn by the lure of unsolved mysteries, set out to spend a weekend at this notorious site. They pitched their tents in a clearing, not far from the cabin, and soon after sunset, they decided to explore the decaying structure. Inside, the silence was palpable. The musty air carried a weight of despair, and every creaking floorboard seemed to whisper warnings. In the center of the main room hung a large, ornate mirror, its glass clouded with age. One of the investigators, Lena, approached it with a mixture of curiosity and dread. As she peered into its depths, the reflection she saw was not entirely her own. The mirror's surface rippled like disturbed water, and in its murk, another face emerged, a gaunt, sorrowful visage with eyes that seemed to plead for release. Lena recoiled, and as the others gathered around, each took turns gazing into the mirror. One by one, their expressions shifted from intrigue to horror as the reflections revealed fleeting images of torment, murder, and despair. That night, the investigators reported strange occurrences. Doors that had been locked were found open. Unexplained footprints circled their tents. And then came the whispering, a soft, continuous murmur that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin. Lena began to experience nightmares. In her dreams, she was trapped in the cabin, unable to escape the haunting figure from the mirror, its eyes following her every move. One member of the group, Tom, decided to document the happenings on his handheld camera. When he reviewed the footage the following day, a chilling anomaly became apparent. In the background of several clips, a shadowy figure could be seen lurking near the cabin's doorway, its form indistinct, yet undeniably human. In a moment of terror, Tom watched as the figure approached the camera and, with a distorted, agonized expression, mouthed words that no one could decipher. The group decided to leave at dawn. But as they hastily packed their belongings, Lena noticed something that made her blood run cold. Back inside the cabin, on the wall beside the mirror, was a message scratched in deep, desperate lines: "Do not look, or you will never be free." The handwriting, jagged and uneven, was unmistakably that of a victim pleading for mercy. None of the investigators ever returned to the site, and the cabin, and its cursed mirror, has since been sealed off by local authorities. Yet, the legend of the reflections of the damned continues to haunt the region, a stark warning of the perils that may lie behind every forbidden door. In the heart of a sprawling national forest in the deep south, a family camping trip turned into a nightmare that no one could have anticipated. The Harris family, comprising a couple and their 2 teenage children, set out for what was meant to be an idyllic weekend escape. They chose a secluded lakeside spot known for its serene beauty, but also for an undercurrent of unease that local residents rarely discussed. An ordinary day turned sinister. The first day was perfect. The sun shone on the water's surface, laughter echoed around the campsite, and the children played by the lake's edge. But as dusk approached on the second day, the atmosphere began to change. An inexplicable chill crept into the air, and the forest, which had been a haven of life and color, seemed to shift into a monochrome world of silhouettes and whispers. It began with a faint murmur, a soft, almost musical murmur that no one could quite locate. Mr. Harris dismissed it as the wind rustling through the leaves. However, as the evening wore on, the whispers grew louder and more insistent, forming disjointed phrases that sounded like pleas for help. The family huddled together in their tent, the fabric trembling with every distant sound. The air was heavy with a presence that seemed to press down on their very souls. That night, as the family attempted to sleep, the whispers evolved into audible voices. Mrs. Harris awoke to the sound of her daughter crying softly. Rushing out of the tent, she found the child standing at the edge of the clearing, transfixed by something in the distance, a dark figure standing motionless by the water's edge. Before she could call out, the figure vanished, as if swallowed by the night. Fear took hold of the entire family. The next morning, they discovered that their campsite had been disturbed. Footprints encircled the tents, and objects were moved from their usual places. A small, leather-bound journal was found near the lake, its pages filled with frantic scribbles and drawings of a gaunt, spectral figure. One entry, dated decades earlier, described an entity that emerged at dusk to collect the souls of the living, an ancient guardian of the lake who was said to feed on fear and despair. In the following days, the Harris family attempted to leave, but every path seemed to lead them back to the lake. Their car, which had been parked near the edge of the forest, was found in a clearing miles away, as though it had been deliberately relocated. The disorientation was so profound that they could no longer distinguish day from night, and the oppressive presence of the forest seemed to close in on them. One by one, they experienced visions, flashbacks of tragedies long past, echoes of voices pleading for redemption. The boundary between reality and nightmare dissolved. After what felt like an eternity of terror, the family managed to break free from the forest's grasp. They eventually found help in a nearby town, their tale so surreal that many dismissed it as a collective nightmare. Yet, when local authorities inspected the lakeside, they found evidence that could not be easily explained: strange carvings on nearby trees, a scattering of ancient coins near the water's edge, and the leather-bound journal that no one in town had ever seen before. The legend of the Whispers at Dusk has since become a cautionary tale for those venturing into that national forest, a reminder that even the most picturesque landscapes can hide unimaginable horrors.